All right, good morning. We're up to Siman Samach Vov, Halacha Ches, Sif Ches. So, Sorich Lismech Kula L'Tefillah. It's very important to juxtapose, to put together the brach of God Yisrael straight away to Shemona Esra. V'lo yafsik la'achar she'omar God Yisrael. You should not be mafsik when you say God Yisrael before you start Shemona Esra. Rak im iru oines. But if an oines happened, shelei niach tefillin, that you didn't put on tefillin, you left your tefillin at home, you haven't got tefillin, v'nizdamnu loy bein gula tefillin. All of a sudden, someone comes along and gives you a pair of tefillin. Meniach oz, you can put them on then. V'lo yivarech aleihem ad achar sheyispalel. So you're standing by God Yisrael, you're about to start Shemona Esra, and all of a sudden someone gives you the tefillin, so then you take the tefillin, you don't make a bracha. Avul talis le'aniach oz. But a talis you don't put on then if you weren't wearing one till now. V'imad shlei omar God Yisrael. But if it was just before God Yisrael, then menichan you put them on. Then even the talis you put on. That's the chilek according to the Shulchan Aruch. It says the Ramah v'yesh shekodim God Yisrael, which the Mishnah will explain exactly where that is. Yivarech ala tefillin, you make a bracha. So long as it's not after you said Baruch Atah Hashem God Yisrael. If it's a bit before that, by Shir Chadash or wherever, you put on tefillin, you even make a bracha on it. V'hachi nog, and that indeed is the minhag. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Sorich lismich, sif koten lamed zayin. Sorich lismich, ayin lekamen simen kuf yud aleph, v'lo yafsik. Afilu b'shir ba'alma b'neim, even a small gap, you shouldn't be mafsik between God Yisrael and Shemona Esra. Now what if you need the bathroom? What if you need the bathroom at that point? You say Baruch Atah Hashem God Yisrael, and then you realize you need the bathroom. So if you look at the second paragraph of footnote 31, it says in Sorich l'nekavov kashamet ben gula l'tefillah kosav b'shalet shuva shevet halevi shelo yispalel ela yifne l'nekavov. You shouldn't daven. You mustn't daven if you need the bathroom, and therefore you should go to the bathroom shari below zeh tefillah te'eva, because otherwise you're tefillah so te'eva. However, the brach of Asher Yotze you say after Shemona Esra. So you go to the bathroom and then you daven Shemona Esra, and the Asher Yotze you say later. Sifkot and Lamates she'omar Gal Yisrael v'hu chamor me'emtza parak. That point of between saying Gal Yisrael and davening Shemona Esra is more chamor than emtza parak. Te'ein lahafsik ba'afinu mepnei hayira kamei b'tefillah. Even for Yira, you're scared of someone, you shouldn't be mafsik, like you're in the middle of Shemona Esra. Once you said God Yisrael, you should not be mafsik. Unless there is a real danger involved. Now, a person doesn't wear, he hasn't got his tefillin. Now this is a very interesting problem. It says Mishnah Berurah Sif Koten Mem, V'lo haya yochel lahamdin b'kriyas Shema. He couldn't wait. Well, why is he not wearing tefillin? We said before, it's very important to say Kriya Shema with tefillin. So how can you have a situation where a guy is sitting in shul, he's about to daven Shemona Esra, he said God Yisrael, and all of a sudden someone gives him a pair of tefillin? How can you have a situation? Because it was getting to the end of Soisman Kriya Shema. Yeah, tomorrow Soisman Kriya Shema is early, 9:27. I think it is. The second Zman. That's the Zman of the Gon. So, anyone davening a main Minyan, you got to make sure you say Kriya Shema before you come to shul, because I don't think most shuls are not going to hit it by 9:27. But anyway, he's with Kriya Shema, she's daven tefillin, so he didn't want to wait to miss Kriya Shema, and then they carry on davening shacharis, and then someone procures a pair of tefillin for him. Mishum shehem misyarish yavazman Kriya Shema, v'hu adin misyarish yavazman tefillah, or he was worried about seisman tefillah. Mispalel belit tefillin, he should daven without tefillin. And then, if you didn't have tefillin, you didn't have tefillin. So then you daven shacharis, and then later in the day you put them on. It can happen sometimes. A person's traveling, you go to a shul, you realize, hey, my gosh, I didn't have tefillin. So then you put them on later, mincha time. V'yoma is a mizmar, and you say some sort of mizmar. Now take a look at 32, 33. 32. It says of a Sifra Menach Machane Yisrael, which is the Chavetz Chaim. That was a sefer written. The Chavetz Chaim wrote lots and lots of svarim. We're familiar with the sefer Chavetz Chaim Lashon Hara. Also, of course, the Mishnah Berurah, which is what we're learning now. And also, he wrote lots of other svarim. But many of the svarim he wrote, all of the svarim, were that's what Klal Yisrael needed. So Machane Yisrael is a sefer. How should Jewish people who have been conscripted into the Russian army, the Polish army, back in the day, in the late 19th century, early 1900s, how did they, minimally keep halacha? Right? There's a famous ma'aser that one time he said to there was pikuach nefesh. You had to eat meat, treifas meat, but otherwise you'd die. You wouldn't survive. There was nothing to eat. So he said to one of the soldiers, he says you can eat the meat. He says, but don't lick the bones. Yeah, there shouldn't be a taiva for it. You've got to live, you've got to survive, but it's pikuach nefesh. But don't lick the bones. Anyway, this Sefer Machane Yisrael, he writes, Shem lo hiniach tefillin b'tefillah shacharis, roi v'nochen she'anichem b'tefillas mincha. You should wear the tefillin during mincha. That's also, you can see the background, the person is in the wartime or whatever it may be, can't put on tefillin in the morning, that's what you should do. Now look at 33 in the middle, he quotes the Eli Rabbah, she'yachzav yikra krishma. In the Mishnah Berurah, he says, Yom Ezeth Mizmar. So you didn't put on tefillin at Shacharis, so put them on when you get home or whatever it is and say Ezeth Mizmar. But he says there, the Eli Rabbah, that you should say Kriya Shema as well. And he says that's what the Shulchan Aruch says previously in Siman Lamed Daled, She'meniach tefillin she Rabbeinu Tam yikra Kriya Shema. That a person who puts on Rabbeinu Tam should also say Kriya Shema. And the Svara is, because according to Rabbeinu Tam, Rashi's tefillin are no good, and therefore you've said Shema without tefillin. So therefore you should say, that's, I don't know if people are knowing to put on wear Rabbeinu Tam, if that's what they do, but that's what we brought earlier. Now, continues the Mishnah Berurah, Tzarech Iyun, with 3 lines into Sif Kotan Mem. This shaila is a very motzu shaila. I have it in base, on a regular basis. What happens, you get a kid, Baruch Hashem with 250 kids, there's always a few. You get a kid who left his tefillin at home. He took them home yesterday, had a simcha or whatever it is, and he left his tefillin at home. And we have 2 spare tefillin in base, but sometimes they're being used. What should a kid do? Is it better? He's going to borrow from his friends. So is it better to see Daven Shachris with everyone else and then put in afterwards? Or is it better to wait and Daven B'Yechidus with tefillin? So which one is better? Is it better to Daven B'Tefillin B'Tzibur and then just put on tefillin afterwards? Or is it better to Daven B'Yechidus with tefillin? And this is quite a motzui shayla that I come across. So Tzarech Iyun, Mi she'ein lo tefillin be'eis sha'tzibur mispalin. Person hasn't got his tefillin. Im tov yoseh she'yispalin ma'tzibur. Is it better to daven with a tzibur after b'li tefillin, even if he's not wearing tefillin? V'ach kach k'shegiu tefillin yada yikay mitzvah tefillin levad. He borrows a pair after davening. Oy mutav she'yisakev ach tefillas hatzibur k'dei lishal tefillin mechaveira. Better to wait until his friend has finished davening and he can borrow that tefillin. K'dei she'yikra krishma v'yispal tefillin, that he can now daven with tefillin. So which is better? So listen to this, a surprising psak. Pasuk HaMagen Avraham, the mutzav she'is akev achat tefillas hatzibur v'yishal tefillin. Better he davens b'yechidus, he does not daven b'tzibur, and borrows a pair of tefillin afterwards. Kadei she'ikra krishma v'yispal b'tefillin. Interesting, no? And I remember we asked this shayla because it was quite common. We were told this, but it's nice to see where it comes from. This is the halacha. So if a person is in that situation, better he davens b'yechidus and maybe learn during that time or whatever, but then he borrows from his friend and he davens b'yechidus, but you shouldn't say krishma and shrenesu without tefillin. Amazing. Okay, Meniach Oz, says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Mem Aleph, the tefillin yesh lahem shaychus the krishma tefillah tvei mitzitzis. So if you're davening and you haven't got tefillin, and you say Gal Yisrael, and then someone gives you a pair of tefillin, put on the tefillin then without a bracha, but not tzitzis. Why? Because yesh lahem shaychus the krishma tefillah tvei mitzitzis. Because tefillin has more of a shaychus than tzitzis. Again, because tzitzis is a chiyuv in the beggar, not in the person. It's a mitzvah. Kiyum is not a mitzvah. Chiyuv is like we've explained. Okay, membase aleihem. But you don't make a bracha on them. I think that's going on. Yeah, v'lo yivarach aleihem. Says the Pri Chadash chelik usvir lei. The Pri Chadash argues and says the kiven d'shoy lo niach tefillin bein gula l'tefillah. Since you're allowed to put them on, yachol levarach kamken. You can also make the bracha. V'lo mikri hefsek. It's not called a hefsek. V'chein pasuk even oiza. Omnum hader Chaim v'chayodem v'shahar v'paiskim hetiku kulam l'divrei Shulchan Aruch l'halacha. And it seems like that's what the Mishnah Berurah is favoring. That others, the Chayodam and many other poskim, say that exactly what the Shulchan Aruch says, that you put on the tefillin, but you do not make a bracha at that point. Okay, carrying on the Mishnah Berurah, but you lo yavorich ad achash yispalel, says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Mem Gimel, shekeshemeshamesh bohem mevorich lehem. When you just sort of you put them on, and then after Shemon Esrei you can make the bracha. You just sort of make the bracha and then you move them around, so it's a shtickle over lasiyosam. Okay. Now, Mem Dalet, but the talis lo yaniachos. But the talis you don't put on. Dal karchachim yetzel esater b'talis, because when he's wrapping up the talis, putting it on him, he's going to have to be quiet before starting Shemon Esrei. And that shtika is a hefsek v'lehuta ki'im letefillin. Okay, menichon. And now, if, however, Loi Omar Gal Yisrael, then Menichin. She'ein hanochas tefillin levishas tathalas hefsek, because that's a bit earlier on, and that's not considered the hefsek. She'afilu yochel likra v'lasik menachta ba'itshel kera v'chud el. Now, what does it mean? She'kodim Gal Yisrael. You have a Yesh Omer who says she'kodim Gal Yisrael. Now, this is the Ramah. Before he says Gal Yisrael, Rotzaloma, kodim she'omer baruch ato Hashem. Once you've said Gal Yisrael, or even Baruch Ato Hashem, you should not be mafsik at all. And like we said above, you put the tefillin on without a bracha. Near the pashat, the kan osalim baruch shem. In that situation where it's you're putting on these tefillin, and you're doing it before you get to Gal Yisrael, you're up to before Tzui Yisrael, for example, right? In that situation, you put on the tefillin and you make a bracha, because you haven't yet said Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. Near a poshet says Mishbur Mem Zayin, Dekan also lema Baruch Shem Kavod. Normally, when we put on a tefillin, you put on tefillin shel yad, you make a bracha, put on tefillin shel yad, make a bracha, put on tefillin shel rosh, and then when they're all straight, you say Baruch Shem. But in this situation, you wouldn't. Shenagin lemach bracha shal mitzvahs, which we know that here we wouldn't. Gam nochen shel levarach bezeki in bracha achas lo niach. Interesting. You only make one bracha in that situation when you're trying to, you're up to Tzui Yisrael. You haven't yet said Gal Yisrael. You get the tefillin, you put the tefillin on, and you make a bracha in that situation, but you make one bracha. The bracha of lo niach. The belav hachi hara poskim sovereign kain, because we said that we've did it before previously that many poskim say you only make one bracha on tefillin, which was the minhag of the gan. Okay, so just to summarize, a couple of points. Number one, you're davening Shemona Esra, you haven't got tefillin, and suddenly someone gives you tefillin between Gal Yisrael and Shemona Esra, put on the tefillin without a bracha. Talas, wait till after Shemona Esra. If you get the tefillin before you say Tzui Yisrael, before you say Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael, you can not only put the tefillin on, but you can even make the bracha on them. What happens in a situation where you have got a choice of either tefillah b'tzibur or tefillin? So amazingly, the Magen Avraham Paskins says in the Mishnah Berurah that you daven b'yechidus, and then you borrow you wait. You don't daven b'tzibur, and then you borrow the tefillin, and you daven b'yechidus with the tefillin. That trumps tefillah b'tzibur. Very interesting psak. Okay, Tess. Ein lanus kaddish u'kedusha ben gula tefillah. If a person is between gula and tefillah, you do not answer even kaddish and kedusha. For keitzad oiseh, how should you conduct yourself? Mamtin b'shir chadosha k'tei lanus. You wait at shir chadosha so that you can answer these brachas, and then you say Tzui Yisrael, and then you say Shemona Esra. It says Mishnah Berurah Sifkat Mem Tes u'kedusha v'chein baruchu. So is true with bracha, with baruchu and moedim. For year let some say, and you should try and calculate it, that you're bowing at the beginning of tefillah, at the same time as the tzibur are bowing at moedim. That way, it's sort of you're sort of in sync with them, and it doesn't look like you're deviating from the tzibur. Bein gula sifkat nun yesh ma'achronim shekasu the b'Shabbos. Interestingly, mutalanus kaddish v'kedusha v'chol hani shedoim lehem nizkar now b'sif gimel bein gula tefillah v'ayin lekam b'sivan kuf yud aleph. On Shabbos is different. The need to juxtapose to be soimech gula tefillah is less pressing on Shabbos than it is during the week. Why exactly? I'm not sure. Nun aleph. If you haven't yet heard Kedusha Baruch Hu, what should you do? Mamdin b'shir chadasha. I guess you're racing ahead for some reason. I don't know quite what the situation is, but you're racing ahead, and all of a sudden there's Kaddish or there's Baruch, there's Kedusha. Baruch Hu, or Kedusha you're behind, or Baruch Hu you're ahead. You wait at shir chadasha and you wait there. You answer Baruch Hu, and then you go ahead, or you answer Kedusha and then you carry on. But the Eved, as long as you haven't said Baruch Atah Hashem, then you're able to answer. Then you answer. You go back to Shir Chadasha, or I'll call upon him at Tzui Yisrael. You go back to Tzui Yisrael, one of the two. For who has Cholas Harinyan? That's the beginning of that little section. The Gam Halitzorich Lemar Me'ein HaChasim Esomach LaChasim LaChatchila. Right. Okay. Let's just finish off the simon. Sif Yud. Kol mishaloi omar emes v'yatziv shachris v'emes v'emuna arvis leyos lichavas hamitzvah. Emes v'yatziv shachris and emes v'emuna imariv, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah properly of Kriya Shema. Now, we'll see what that means. In fact, let's just do straight away the Mishnah Berurah. Nun gimel katikuna. Doesn't mean you haven't been yotze Kriya Shema. You said the 3 paragraphs of Shema. The brachas are not ma'akev. It's not ideal, it's not the best way of doing it, because the best way of saying Shema is with the brachas beforehand and the brachas afterwards. And if you didn't manage for whatever reason to say the brachas of Kriya Shema, you should make it up after davening. If you didn't manage before Shemona Esrei, and if you in that situation you couldn't say the brachas of Kriya Shema, it's good to say Kriya Shema with it, i.e. the brachas of Kriya Shema, Shema, and the brachas after Kriya Shema. That's the Brit Yosef. You've got to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim, Umalchus, Ukriyas Yamsuf, Umachkas B'chayris Ein Sham. Umash Berasha Brachas Yudalef in Gemara Brachas Yudalef Delikuvahu, that this is Ma'akev Afilu B'Diavad. V'Tzorchim and Brachas Yudaled on base is shver from the Gemara and Brachas further on Yudaled V'Boilit Kurei V'Sharnu Loch Ratzolema Micha Meicha Ad Seif HaBracha Pirish Rashi Lefizeh Chosim Machas B'Chayris, because there's no reference to Machas B'Chayris V'Doichel Echalei Ben Shachris Ta'arvis, and it's shver to make a difference between Shachris and Mariv, where what you do say it, I think, in Marab and non Shachris, I think it's that way around. Maybe they had a different nusach where they made reference to Makas B'chores at the end. Now, if you messed up the brachas at the end of Kriya Shema, after Shemona Esrei, after Shema, before Shemona Esrei, and you got the orders wrong, if you didn't yet finish off the bracha, yachzor letil bracha, you go tchilas bracha, you go back to the beginning. Ve'im Oma Hashem Yisayim ve'in tzarich lasan. If you've already said the shem, then you don't need to go back, even though you had a different nusach. Okay, let's just finish off the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Mi shehu onus v'dochuk ve'in lo pnai lehispalel miyadach Kriya Shema. For whatever reason, the Mishnah scratches his head and says, "What is the scenario?" But if for some reason a guy is davening and he hasn't got time, he said Kriya Shema in shul, and then he's got to rush out. Yikra Kriya Shema ad v'emes. You say Kriya Shema ad emes. V'yamtin le'ma shah brachas ha'shispal. The rest, i.e. the brachas after Shema, you say later. She'oz yom v'yatziv v'nochen v'yispal. You say v'yatziv v'nochen, and then you daven Shemona Esrei. K'dei sh'yismerich kula l'tefillah. Says the Mishmur Sivkot Nun Dalet. Ve'ein lo pnai tzorech iyun. V'chi mi hitir lo lifsoik mipnei she'ein lo pnai. Who told you to stop davening just because you haven't got time? Make time. And Misha ein le panai yikra Kriya Shema levad b'le brachas. Say Kriya Shema without the brachas afterwards. V'achkach she le panai yikra Kriya Shema u'brachas. Then say Kriya Shema and all the brachas v'yispal, and then daven Shemona Esrei u'chazil el b'siman samach sif beis. V'seifa nahar shalom kosov the mikol makom din haramahu emes v'nochen. The din of the Ramah is correct. Heicha shekar Kriya Shema, where you already said Kriya Shema. Ki hoya sovu sheyochel ligma kol hatfilah. You thought you could daven Shemona Esrei as well. V'shuv achar shekar Kriya Shema muchruch machazei zon eslav. For some reason after you said Shema, you got called out in an emergency or something like that. Better to stop after you said Hashem Lekechem Emes, and then later say the brachas after Kriya Shema, and then say Shemona Esrei. Don't just say all the brachas after Kriya Shema and just suddenly just launch into Shemona Esrei independently at a later point. But if you knew in the outset you're not going to have time to do all of this, then everyone agrees. Tomorrow morning, Shabbos morning, for example, just say the brachas of Kriya Shema. Okay, leave it there.